This may not sit comfortably with some people.
I don't think you're being bullied. I think that's just trying to develop a thick skin.
The issue with all this is no physical harm.
Was everything done too late?
They're listening. They're listening to how things are being pronounced, how things are being read.
It connects the whole community, binds all the community together.
Hello everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Beyond the Headlines, the go-to space for the top stories that made the headlines and more. I'm Almalina Kamal.
And I'm Hasbin Hassan. Malaysia's penal code has just undergone a significant amendment with the passing of the Penal Code Amendment Act 2025. New provisions now address harassment, bullying, insults, and the misuse of identity, whether these acts occur offline or online.
Yes, and these changes are not merely incremental. The introduction of 507B to 507G provides clear legal definitions and prescribes substantial penalties, particularly in situations where harassment or bullying result in serious crimes.
The legislative development comes alongside a high-profile and deeply concerning case, the death of Zara Qairina. Her passing has prompted a widespread public concern and calls for an inquest to determine whether there were any criminal elements involved.
And both the legal reform as well as this particular case raise pressing questions. Now, how effective can the law protect people from abuse, and how can justice system, ensure transparency as well as accountability when lives are lost under such suspicious and sudden circumstances?
Right, and to examine the legal implications and procedural aspects, we are pleased to have in the studio with us today criminal lawyer Dato' N. Sivananthan. Dato', welcome.
I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you here
Pleased
as
to
well.
have you. Yeah.
Okay. So yes, I think this. Strangely enough, the amendments have come in, and almost immediately after the amendments, you have the unfortunate demise of Zara in a situation which appears to fall within the scope of the amendments that have just been introduced.
Right.
So it's the entire.
It's quite extensive, right? I thought.
Yeah.
So
507B to G is now really going to come into play. You know,
It's a
in
big
terms of-
umbrella there.
very big umbrella of amendments which, to be honest, it's not tried and tested. There's no jurisprudence. There is going to be jurisprudence, some form of jurisprudence now, I think, now that the inquest has been ordered, but really left to be seen.
Right.
I mean, just to quickly list out what the new sections are, right, the amendments, without going into what they are defined as. 507B is causing harassment, distress, fear, or alarm.
Yeah.
507C is causing harassment, distress, fear, or alarm to a person likely to feel harassed, distress, fear, or alarmed. 507D is causing a person to believe that harm will be caused. 507E is publishing or identifying any information that can cause harassment, distress, fear, or harm. And 507F is publishing any identity information to cause a person to believe that harm will be caused. And 507G, the final one, is definitions of what harm, identity information, and a related person is all about.
Yep. So as you can see, very, very broad scope of offences that may be caused. And I can foresee a lot of problems with it. I know the minister, when proposing the amendments in Parliament, took the position that bullying per se was not covered under the law as it stands, the criminal intimidation, and the whole purpose of these provisions was to ensure that if something untoward happened, there would be a provision that would catch it somehow, that someone would not get away scot-free, although a harm has been caused, but simply because the current penalties or current offences that exist don't seem to fit into that particular set of facts. That was the intention of the minister, intention of Parliament in introducing these new laws.
Right. But one thing that stands out, particularly in this particular amendment, right, is that the law explicitly covers acts that are committed online as well. So from your experience, especially in, having to push for criminal liability in court, right? How important is it to have these clear provisions addressing cyberbullying?
I think the problem you have with cyberbullying, firstly, how easy is it to identify the perpetrator of the crime? Who is it that you're going to charge? It's not so simple. A lot of people commit these crimes either hiding behind an anonymous identity or hiding behind VPNs or various other softwares that they can use where we are unable to get information immediately. And the service providers may not be happy to release the information for whatever confidentiality reasons or whatever. So an example is like assuming you have a WhatsApp communication that you're going to use to charge someone. What happens if you have one party, the perpetrator, who deletes all his WhatsApps and it's all being saved in the main website, in cloud or whatever it is, and you can't access it? How do you prove that he was the one who sent the WhatsApp? More often than not, if you are lucky to be able to arrest someone very quickly and able to secure his phone, and you're able to secure the messages that were sent and you can match it to the recipient and the sender, then you may have something.
Timestamps alone won't help, right?
Yes.
Because yes, the device may be yours. You are there near your phone at the time, but what if someone just quickly steals it and just takes it out?
If he says, look, I went to the restroom at the time, I left it on the table, and I don't know, someone may be just typing in those messages, just to cause me trouble. How do you rebut that? There are too many issues, and the strict ingredients of a criminal offense still apply. It has to be beyond a reasonable doubt, and if you don't hit that standard, then the person has to be acquitted. And you can imagine the room for manipulation. I mean, for example, you talk about identity. I mean, one of the offenses is posting garbage, basically, about the identity of a person. You can get AI to create. You may not even be posting an actual photo of the person.
That's right.
But it could be a nude photo or whatever it may be of the person, which is not the person. Sure. But AI has created it because you can grab a photo of, anyone, anywhere online.
It's called deepfakes, right?
Yeah.
These sort of
deepfake, yes, of course.
AI-generated images.
And we have seen in Malaysia, for example, deepfake has been used to defraud
on
That's right.
various levels. Even heads of companies are
that's right.
being defrauded by people they think they're dealing with, but they're not.
Yeah.
And Dato, earlier you in explaining the amendments, you said that it is still very wide. There are some blurred lines here and there. There's no exact definition, and I just want to get into that. Are you suggesting that the law right now is rather open to interpretation? Because just before we started recording, you were saying, how do we define bullying? Because bullying can be something that's not the same for everyone.
Okay, the problem with definition is you can't define it. If you define it, number one, it's impossible. It's too wide. So there has to be what we call a reasonable man test.
Okay.
But what is a reasonable man's test? Is it what the judge considers reasonable? Is it what society considers reasonable? Is it what a particular school of thought considers reasonable? And of course, the reasonable man test would differ if you're in Europe or you're in America or you're in Malaysia, because our cultural practices are very different. What we consider important here and how one should conduct themselves may be very different somewhere else.
I just want to address on, some critics having to say that the amendments would actually be potentially be misused here, especially when it comes to personal disputes. Are there safeguards in addressing
Actually,
this?
if you ask me,
counter measurements.
If you ask me, there are no safeguards. And, okay, we are going to rely on prosecutorial discretion, i.e., we are going to rely on the fact that the public prosecutor is going to be looking at everything very carefully before deciding whether to initiate prosecution. But the problem with that is this: the way that the Act is drafted, anything that anyone says which results in some issue can theoretically become an offense, depending on who is the person looking at it. So to me, the potential for misuse is tremendous.
So we are being overregulated in that sense?
I think too much. Too much. Section 503, as it existed, criminal intimidation, requires a very high level of action or facts or offences before it becomes an offence.
Right.
But the new amendments basically allows for anything you and I do, depending on who the complainant is, to be made into an offence. And sadly, I think it's, as someone who's practiced criminal law for a long time,
Yeah.
we have the presumption of innocence in law, but we have the presumption of guilt as far as the public is concerned.
Oh,
And
that's
if you are
tougher.
charged,
Yeah.
you are vilified, you are condemned. Nobody is bothered about the final outcome that you are
That's
found.
true. The charge is
innocent.
basically the judgment
Yeah,
itself.
if you are
right?
charged,
Yeah.
you are guilty. And your reputation goes and everything goes.
But what does that say about the general public though? Meaning they don't necessarily understand the justice process, right?
They don't. I mean, I don't think that's unique to Malaysia alone. I think a lot of countries, perhaps, when someone is charged, there's a presumption that the person has committed
Not
the
sentenced
offence.
yet, yes.
Yeah, you know, that you have committed the offence, and after that, as I say, it takes
Right.
you 5 years
Right.
before you are found not guilty, but in the process, everything is ruined. You really, really would have to hope that the prosecutor is very, very careful before charging anyone under any of these offences. Because as I say, you can have a set of facts which you and I may consider, look, normal statement. But if you simply, I'm going to use Zara's case as an example. Death has occurred. Okay, death has occurred, no doubt about it. Assuming that the death occurred without foul play. When I say without foul play, which means the person committed the act that led to death herself.
Okay.
So we're going to assume that, because I don't know what the inquest says. Now, if you are going to relate it to an offence under 507D, which is the most serious offences because it's suicide or attempted suicide, that's up to 10 years. Assuming that you find the element of bullying is someone, for example, making fun of her, for example, and she was so distressed by that event that she committed suicide. Does that make it an offence?
Right.
Because people do make fun of other people
Yep.
normally, but is that an offence?
I mean, surely it is to some extent though, because it has driven, earlier I did mention, if that particular action drives a person to commit or get involved in serious crimes.
Okay, for example, in this suicide, would it be reasonable for that person to know that that act would lead to this? Because with someone else, it may not. So who makes that decision? Again, we are now coming back to exactly the problem we have.
Right.
You look at the final outcome and then you say, okay, what you did therefore caused.
So essentially, there's no set or fixed notion on what constitutes bullying here. But perhaps could it be that the amendments made to the penal code here stops short of physical assault?
Okay.
Because that's probably one way to look at it. And then if it goes beyond that, then it goes
open
into another
The normal penal
provision.
code offences, of
Exactly.
course.
Is
Agreed.
is that how it should be seen?
Yeah, I mean, as I say, I have no problem with the provisions that have been introduced. I think and again, this problem may not arise, but I think it requires a very fair-minded person who looks into the elements of any possible offence very carefully before deciding whether the bullying occurs. Okay, I mean,
Okay.
you're not talking about the bullying, as you say, where harm occurs. We've had so many people being charged for murder, manslaughter, or whatever it may be, and for grievous bodily harm or actual bodily harm or whatever it is. Those are no problem. The issue with all this is no physical harm has occurred, except for the suicide situation. Everything else is theoretically, you're not having someone coming and doing something to you. You're not using a weapon or you're not hitting you or whatever it is, but you're causing that mental distress which
Drive a
may
person to
cause
edge.
that person to do something.
I mean, when we talk about bullying, right, we hear a lot of restorative sort of justice and counselling on bullies, right, whenever they are caught, or at least they have to go for counselling. But does Malaysia's legal system actually look at or even make room for these approaches to be more holistic instead of punitive in that sense. And for this, we do have basically an interview that we've done with criminologist and senior lecturer of the Faculty of Law in University Malaya, Dr. Harisana Begum Abdul Hamid. So we're going to cue to that and come back to the set.
From a criminology perspective, how important is it that the law now recognizes these areas, these gray areas?
Bullying is not a new phenomena. Bullying is an act, is an imbalance of power, basically, which has been done or not say practiced but used since before we were born also. Only thing is that I personally feel that we are quite slow to enact laws on bullying, and it's great that now finally we have laws on bullying from section 507B particularly until section 507 F. I mean, G is the terminology, and there's one on section 507D. They call it Asia clause, because that one where a person can be sentenced to 10 years imprisonment if the victim attempts suicide or commits suicide. So when we look at bullying and from a criminological aspect, it's basically the first thing that we see. There is an imbalance of power, and that these laws can help to. It cannot help to eliminate. It can help to maybe. It can act as a deterrence. We hopefully hope. It's hopeful. We're hopeful that it can reduce the bullying. That means there's no impunity towards the bully, because since there is a provision now, but still we do not have a specific anti-bully act, or we don't have a specified provisions in the Child Act, for example. So I feel that while this is a positive steps of including bullying provisions in the penal code, I hope it does not stop there. There need to be also some kind of laws in the Child Act. Frankly, I'm not a fan of many laws, but in this instance, because of the effect and the consequences that's dire and severe, we do need all these safeguards and safety nets.
You mentioned about having to introduce the Anti-Bullying Act, or at least revise the provisions under the Child Act. What are these? Can I understand further?
You have to create a new act, okay? That's designed just for bullying. That would also include harassment, because bullying and harassment is a very gray line. We have now Sexual Harassment Act that also covers a little bit on bullying actually. Because bullying is basically, it can be an assault, it can be harassment, and it's not necessarily physical. It can be emotional. There is also soft bully, and you can also cyberbully. Yeah. So bullying is a loaded term actually, because when you say that somebody is being bullied, it can manifest in multiple ways. For example, soft bully is like, if you look at those in the boarding schools, where you have a situation where it's always for example, sometimes you have seniors who eat first and later the juniors, or you have situations like my friend Dr. Faranini said, they ask the juniors to wake up early and shower first so that the seniors can sleep longer and shower after. So these are all called, soft bully. And the thing is that it can also escalate into workplace bully, because the bully will grow up, or the one who's bullied will grow up and become a bully. That happens. So we really need to look at it in a bigger perspective. Yep.
But on the Child Act specifically,
if you see in the Child Act, there are certain provisions talking about neglect, harming the children and all that, but there is no specific mention on bully. Okay, there's no specific mention on bully. So even I think in the penal code, the recent amendments, there is no specific mention on bully. And sometimes when you don't define bully is because you try to let it open so that it can be interpreted by court. Because sometimes if you define bully, sometimes there are ways to just, exclude certain form of bully. So, I mean, there is always the pros and cons. So I think in the Child Act, that there need to be a provision, because at the end of the day, it's about the best interest of the child. But if it's in the Child Act, we must remember it only applies to children 18 and below.
But following up this particular question, do you think punitive measures alone can actually work in reducing such cases, or should we actually focus on rehabilitation and correctional approaches for offenders?
Yeah, definitely. Punitive retributive measures will not work only. I mean, don't say bully. It also applies to all crimes. We have all sorts of crimes. We have prohibitions, but the crime still happens. Similarly, bully can still happen, even if we have provisions. The only thing is that we are now making sure that if there is a report, the person who bully will take some accountability rather than having impunity. I think we have a problem where some people are dismissive over bully. Also, we have people who do not understand what bullying is, and also many times people who bully or people who observe someone who's being bullied, they try to normalize it, and sometimes they water down that act of bully by saying that this is not bully, this is just to make sure to discipline you. This is an act of
Open your skin,
obedience.
gain a thick skin in that sense, right?
This is an act of obedience. This is an act of respect. Or I have, had to go through this. So this is part and parcel of being a junior or something like that. So many, there's so many things. So that's why to me, awareness, education is very important. Look through every single aspect of bullying, direct or indirect bullying or soft bullying. Put it out there so that people will know you're thinking of doing that. Sorry, that this amounts to bully as well.
I just want to understand the engagement behind it. What drives an individual to bully? And in your experience, do you happen to know some of the factors that drives a person to engage in that act itself?
Okay. There are multiple factors on why a person bully. Yeah? It ranges from just for the fun of it, to a situation where that person wants to exert control, and then to a situation where that is premised on economic purpose. They want some money, they can't get money, so they try and get the money from the person they bully. And then it may also stem from their own problems at home, their tension, their stress, and then it can be wanting to show that their individualness, or trying to portray that they're someone tough, wanting people to fear them, thinking that they will come out or portray themselves as someone very important. So that's why I said there are multiple reasons why a person become a bully, and we cannot just put one reason.
I mean, obviously, we're talking about this particular topic is following the death of Zara Qairina, the sudden death of Zara Karina, which has sparked public concern earlier I mentioned. And from your perspective, today the AG's chamber actually ordered an inquest into her death following the family's request, right? So in this particular context, right, how can an inquest actually uncover the broader social and psychological context behind such tragedies?
Well, when an inquest proceedings happen, so all the necessary documents will be tendered in court. I mean, there will be witnesses who will be called to explain and justify the death. So the thing is to see the reason for an inquest is to make sure that there's no foul play. If it's supposed to be a natural death, then that natural death statement will be corroborated by the pathologists, by the people around, whoever who is the professionals who can testify for that. But because there's so much of opinion and so much of also stories going around, I personally feel that that's a good move, that, you know, inquest is needed. Firstly, to eliminate any rumors, if at all that is rumors. If there is bullying happen, so this may not sit comfortably with some people. Even if there is bullying that happen, it has to be established that that bullying did not cause a death. So in that inquest, so if there is some reason for the court to see that this is not a simple natural death, you know, there is some foul play coupled with the fact that there's bullying going on, so there will be that, then, you know, they will open the file and there will be another investigation. But I'm sure that if that that would be received well by the public, looking at the sentiment of the public. Only thing is that if, let's say, the court decides and see that, you know, they cannot connect that with her death, I'm sure that, you know, people will not be very satisfied with that. That's the danger of sometimes when we see, you know, rumors, trial by media. That's the danger. But, you know, but let's see what happens.
I remember quite vividly last week, MCMC has also sort of made a reminder of like not to share speculations so openly. Like, to what extent does it actually impact an investigation? Will it macam potentially derail an ongoing proceeding of such a case?
It can cause distrust towards the authorities, because people want to believe what they believe, and they are hoping that the investigations will yield results that they are actually suspecting. So when there's a lot of rumors, and then let's say from the police investigation, you know, the discovery of that investigation, the findings does not match or does not yield the results as per the rumors that, you know, we are listening of, there's definitely going to be a public uproar, the distrust towards the authorities and all that. So that is that danger part. But I don't see it contributing or, you know, or disturbing or intervening with the with the investigation.
Technicalities lah.
Yeah, maybe okay, in the police, whoever who's investigating this, may probably find it you know, that may impose, a heavier burden on them to investigate. For example, let's say they investigate and they don't find anything, for example, but because there's so much of rumors going on, they have to recheck every or consider every possibilities.
Doctor, I just want to go back to, you know, following the whole attention and media coverage of Zara Qairina's death. So the Education Ministry said that they are reviewing or at least engaging in creating a new SOP, and they will work together with student groups, civil society on bullying case. But to what extent is this just a bandage over a wound kind of thing? It doesn't necessarily address Malaysia's bullying crisis here.
So at the moment, we are looking at it as an immediate response. I'm sure, like you said, they are under a lot of pressure, and I'm sure that they need to take immediate steps to try to remedy whatever is happening, because it impacts the schools, it impacts the ministry, it impacts the government as a whole, I'm sure. But whether this is just a knee-jerk reaction or just a bandage over the wound, we have to see now. At the moment, we cannot tell. Because now things are still hot. We can perhaps see in the next year, will there how efficient is all these SOPs, being adhered to? If, let's say, next year we still continue to get cases like this current one, meaning that this whatever steps that's been taken may not be considered useful. If there has not been any case, still there need to be an ongoing advocacy on anti-bully. So we have to see that how effective or how serious schools and the ministry is going to take anti-bully cause advocacy forward.
Because my question stemmed from, because again, Zara Karina's case is not just the only one. We have past cases like Zua Farhan. But he endured like physical abuse, right? The cadet, and then the institutional response after that is while investigations have been done by MINDEF and everything, but there have been no immediate reshuffle following the death. And then but that one, the attention was on a different agency. Today it's on a different agency, but the pattern is still the same, right? And prior to that, it's the death of the TikTok user, I think Rajaswari Apahu, if I'm not mistaken, or also known as Aisha. So but that one is because she was driven to commit suicide. So it is actually a very pressing case for us, and unfortunately some of these individuals are still very young. They have a whole life ahead of them.
To me, two main things. One, there's a problem of victim blaming. Although we do have public uproar, public concerns, but there are also some people who likes to victim blame, even in cases of bullying. If you see, there are people who say that, a normal person wouldn't attack another person. It's just that person who's putting that person's self at risk. Why did this person show off, or why did this person do things like that? Like I said, I'm also watering down an act of bully by saying that this is not bully, this is just obedience. This is respect and all. I mean, this thing to me happens a lot. Unfortunately, in boarding schools, and a lot also in religious schools. I don't know why people use all these terms, obedience, obedient to God, and even in trafficking cases, when a person who's being exploited, even they say that this is not exploitation, this is obedience to a teacher. You see how people manipulate, so that is one thing. So I think that part, how whatever the laws are, if that person is being brainwashed to think of whatever that person is enduring is such, then there won't be a report, and that person will just continue to be bullied or exploited.
Doctor, thank you so much for your insights. Is there anything else you'd like to highlight?
The only thing is that remember that bullying is not just confined to children or adolescents, because if we don't nip it in the bud, if we continue to look at it as something part and parcel of a child growing up, this thing does not extinguish itself. It will escalate to workplace bullying when the child is working. So it's either the child will turn to become a bully, and the bully will then be bullied. There are always things like that.
Just some takeaways from that particular interview. Dr. Azrina did say that the issue, especially when it comes to, because earlier we talked about how do you define bullying, right? Not necessarily about the definition, but the circumstances of it all. When a person voices out that they've been treated in a certain way, people around tend to underplay that situation as I don't think you're being bullied. I think that's just trying to develop a thick skin for you. So that is actually an issue in itself. So more advocacy and understanding about what creates an environment of bullying needs to be looked into further. And then he also did say, especially when it comes to legal reform is concerned, that we don't have a specific anti-bullying act. Yeah. Your thoughts on that?
Although I think as far as the Anti-Bullying Act is concerned, I think the provisions that have been introduced covers, because there are elements that have been taken from the Act, from Singapore and so forth, which has an Anti-Bullying Act.
Yeah.
But if you ask me, you're talking about, you are right, what they've introduced are the punitive measures for things that have occurred. But fundamentally, educating children about what bullying can do and how it may affect people in different ways, that's where you start, isn't it? I mean, you're talking about parents, you're talking about the school, you're talking about people trying to understand what may be traumatic to someone else.
That's right.
You're talking about what are the things that you should avoid saying because you may think it's normal, but it could have a drastic effect on someone else. And that's not something I think that's done overnight. But I don't see personally whether that particular effort is being done in our schools, in our education system. I mean, if you ask me, bullying should be a subject of its own in schools.
Oh, moral ethics.
Moral-
We do
yeah.
have pendidikan moral, right? But I think a lot
I
of
think
people
we did
don't
at
know.
one point in
Yeah.
time, but
Yeah.
yeah, but bullying, if you ask me, is a subject because it's very difficult for people to understand why I shouldn't be able to do A, B, or C without understanding what the effect could be on someone else.
In the past, we've had a lot of cases transpiring, right? We've got the Zulfarhan, and you've got the TikTok user who was driven to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And there were little, so I say implications towards the offender, right? But we don't want to be drawing other sort of attention towards that particular case because the verdict has been out. But this, like you, I think outside of the set, you mentioned that even with these amendments, you can't revisit, or
You can't
apply it
revisit those
retrospect.
cases.
Yeah.
If you're using these provisions
Yeah.
to charge someone, you can't. It's not retrospective, the penal provisions. But again, for example, if you have a group of 10 friends and one person then says that this person is a bad person because she's this and she's that and everything else, and everybody starts echoing it. Everybody in the group, the other 9, start saying, yeah, she's a bad person, she's this, she's that, echoing whatever the first person has said. And that person who is the victim or the subject matter of those statements, what happens if that person, say, commits suicide as a result of all these statements? Can you then say that anyone in the group thought that this would be the consequence?
Because it leaves so much to interpretation here, could it potentially, in a sort of untowardly kind of way, be sending out a message where we are kind of saying that I shouldn't be held accountable for how you react to what I say?
That's that's where it comes from. I mean, I am who I am. If you don't like who I am, go away or stop having any communication with me. Of course, I'm differentiating this from people who create AI photos and post it over the internet. I mean, that's obviously a clear
crime, and
crime,
it's-
on its
yeah.
own. But if I say something and you don't like it, walk away. That's one option. Walk away. Because if you look at all this, the safest thing to do is say nothing. But is that what we want?
No, right?
Is that what we want? Everyone just keeps quiet, and whatever opinions they have of you, they just keep it to themselves. Nobody says anything, but they're thinking so many different things. Is that the type of society that we want to live in?
Yeah. No, because, to expand this further, right, tie it back to Zara Qairina's case. Now, the AGC has ordered an inquest under Section 3391 of the Criminal Procedural Code. So the coroner's court will independently decide the cause and manner of her death, despite yesterday on August 13th, if I'm not mistaken, that basically the postmortem said that the results is similar with the initial one in terms of the cause of death, right, the injury, the brain injury. But should this particular upcoming inquest go beyond medical findings and actually interrogate institutional accountability?
The interesting thing about where we are right now is that there is a whole new avenue open to the coroner, and essentially is 507D. Can I now find a set of facts caused by persons who are identifiable or not that led to the death? So theoretically, this expands what the coroner can do. And if the coroner finds it, again, as I say, which is why I think this inquest is going to have to explore all the new amendments.
It takes time to.
It takes time. Obviously, I mean, the inquest has been ordered. Obviously, they'll fix dates and they'll call witnesses. And, whoever the police have taken statements from, and maybe other witnesses as well, who will come forward. I mean, I think the police say they took about 40 statements or whatever it is. I am not sure, but at least whatever has come out doesn't seem to suggest that they have been able to pinpoint to a particular event that had caused her to jump.
Tapi we're still circling back to medical findings. I'm talking about, institutional accountability, for instance, the school and other parts of it, right? Should the inquest also capture that area as well?
I think that's very important, because assuming that there was a set of events that occurred to which, say, for example, the school turned a blind eye to, that would be distressing. For Zara, if she had come to the school with a particular complaint, for example, and identified the perpetrators, again, another example, and the school basically said, look, it doesn't matter, leave it, and the perpetrators walk free in the same school, she is in the same school.
And no intervention has been done.
No intervention.
Yeah.
I think that would be highly, highly distressing to Zara. But again, whose fault is it? The perpetrators were identified, they were questioned, and no action taken. Is it the fault of the institution? Or is it their fault? Because they were identified, but at the end of the day, there was some decision, let's say, not to go further with the matter, or not to even bring it to the attention of the authorities.
And to that, Dato', I ask you, was everything done too late?
I wouldn't use the word too late, because in the sense that there was no foul play found during the postmortem. If there was, then the too late argument really comes into play. Okay. Evidence that could have been collected wasn't collected. Because the fact that they found there was no foul play, so you're talking about events that may have transpired last week, I mean, the weeks before or the months before or whatever it is. So I don't think it's too late, but it requires some very detailed investigation.
I do have one question to kind of address, all these lingering doubts that, surrounding Zara Qairina's case. What sort of must answer, not even forensic questions, other sort of questions for, a criminal lawyer looking into this that needs to be part of the investigation, or at least revealed through the investigation or the inquest?
I think the inquest must have the evidence of anyone and everyone who may have had even a little part to play in the history behind what led Zara to her death. I think that's crucial. So statements, because sometimes it's not just one single event, but it's a cumulative set of events that had triggered it. And if you don't investigate thoroughly, you're not going to be able to find all the various parts.
507 carries a 10-year maximum
507
penalty.
D only.
D only.
D only carries, the others are 3 years and 1 year. D
That's the
is the most serious, which is up to 10 years, which means it must lead to either an attempted suicide or suicide.
Right.
These two events are a prerequisite, but it's 10 years. That's equivalent to what we call manslaughter 2. Manslaughter 2 carries a maximum of 10 years. So they're equating that to,
But I'm glad that you also highlight that, because I just wanted to say this, because a lot of people are looking at Section 507 and the murder and manslaughter as two different things, right? Because they don't look at the sentencing, the breadth of the sentencing. So if you're saying 507D is equivalent to manslaughter 2, then whoever is caught, if they are caught, then it is a very impactful sort of punishment.
It is, because one, you have someone you can directly link to the death, and here you're talking about someone who is not directly linked, but was part of the chain of events somewhere down the line, which the prosecution then says led to a death. You can imagine how difficult that is. One is, I know I caused the death. One, how did I become involved in this death? So very interesting situation, and as I say, Zara's passing is going to pose some serious challenges to the coroner's court, if you ask me.
And either way, Dato', I'd just like to add that with or without the amendments, with the new provisions, it's very hard to ignore the public outcry that it's taken to get to this point in the investigation of her death.
Yeah, just to answer your question, I think it's very unfortunate that it has taken public outcry to have the second postmortem and to come up with these findings of possible bullying, and also the confirmation by the CID director that there was a lack of interest or lack of responsibility on the part of the investigating officer doesn't say much about the fact, because theoretically it would mean that as far as the Sabah police were concerned, that this could have been swept under the carpet had it not been for public outcry. And maybe she's going to get justice only because of that.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate.
Very
And a
unfortunate.
very dark part of our nation's history in that sense, right, as well?
I mean, I'd imagine if I were a parent right now, I'd be having doubts about putting my child in boarding school.
Yeah,
And
that's
you
true.
know, the question also, how many other deaths were swept under the carpet?
Right.
That is for another discussion. Hopefully, we won't be having that particular discussion
Yeah,
as well,
well,
because
yeah.
it's very morbid to
Yeah.
think about it. But anyway, so this particular discourse is, of course, to answer the earlier question that I posed, which is how effective can our law protect people from abuse, and how can our justice system actually ensure transparency and accountability when lives are lost? And with that, I do want to thank our guest for today, criminal lawyer Dato' N. Sivanathan. Thank you so much, Dato', for being on Beyond the
And
Headlines.
thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Right. To our audience, don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our second segment. Now, in an age where information is just a click away, the New Straits Times is taking a bold step in bridging digital as well as print, as well as reading, listening, and learning.
Yes, and in collaboration with the Malaysian Communications and Multimedia Commission, the NST has launched Heard the News, Read With Me, Malaysia's first QR-coded audio news articles.
And from improving English proficiency as well as boosting general knowledge. Now, this particular initiative is also reaching rural areas via its collaboration with MCMC through the NADI Centres, which is the National Information Dissemination Centre.
That's right, Amalina. And today we'll find out how this innovation is set to change the way Malaysians consume news, learn and connect. And for that, joining us in the studio are NST's very own lifestyle editor, Intan Maizura Ahmad Kamal, and
Hi.
associate editor, Najmuddin Najib.
Hi.
Intan, welcome.
Hi.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome both. Now, of course, to break the ice, Naj, maybe you can, explain to our audience what NST's Heard the News is all about.
Okay, so Heard the News, Read With Me is part of the NST's 180th anniversary initiative. Now, even before the 180th anniversary had arrived, we had already rolled out several digital initiatives for the NST, such as our AI-powered news readers. So NST's Heard the News, Read With Me. How it works, basically, is that you need a copy of the New Straits Times. Throughout the New Straits Times, there are 6 articles which feature the QR code, the Heard News QR code. All you need to do is use your phone, scan the QR code, and the article will be read out in an audio fashion by one of our 4 newsreaders who are actual members of the New Straits Times editorial staff. Yeah.
And perhaps we can go into like why, especially in this particular age, right? A lot of people are utilizing AI to make reading more, I suppose, fast or easy. But in this particular context, right, Heard the News refers to actual human readers, news readers. Why is that so?
Okay, because you can use AI, but AI cannot emote, right? I think you've probably seen, several versions of that, right? And you kind of get frustrated because you don't get the feel of the story. So when you hear one of us read, I think we do emote, whatever we're reading, whatever is being expressed, we can actually adjust accordingly. So I think in terms of listening to something like that, it's nicer as well. And you can actually have a feel of, what's being written about. Don't you think, Naj?
Yep, I agree. And there's also the element of us being an entirely Malaysian product. We are a Malaysian institution, and it's only fair that our articles are read out in a Malaysian manner as well. So you don't want to have Subang Jaya mispronounced as Subang Jaya.
Is it?
So
Yes.
yeah, we're reading it out as a Malaysian would.
Yeah, no, we've heard that in some like AI news reads, right? Like with Dato, it's Dato.
Dato.
Yeah.
You don't want that.
And it becomes kind of monotonous as well.
Yeah.
Right.
After a while, you get kind of bored after listening one after another, and everything just sounds the same.
True,
Yeah.
true. I mean, yes, automating the process would be a lot easier, but yeah, we're used to doing things the harder way around here.
And I suppose
Right.
part of it is promoting English proficiency, so you have to present it right?
Of
You
course.
have to have that human touch.
Of course, of course. And the target audience here is not just students. Of course, this would be great to help students who are just learning to read, learning about English, and how it helps them learn pronunciation, enunciation, as well as understanding what the news feature is. But this also applies to, I suppose, even adults. Some of us out there may be a bit shy about our lack of English skills, maybe. So this you can basically use this in your own time, in your own privacy, and the way the feature works is that you can even rewind, listen to the words, practice again. Yeah, so it's all done at your own convenience. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. We have both a human and Malaysian touch to this, which I think makes it very unique to NST, obviously. Now, on the you mentioned, Naj, earlier that there are 6 articles
Correct.
from the newspaper that we can enjoy this, feature. So I was wondering, the articles that are featured with this QR code, what sort of articles are they? Is there a theme that you associate with this initiative?
Okay, yeah, thanks for the question. Now, the 6 articles selected run the whole gamut of the newspaper. There will be 2 from general news. There will be 1 from lifestyle, which Intan specializes in. We have 1 from sports, 1 from world, and 1 from the business section. So there is something for everyone, something for beginner readers all the way up to advanced readers, so they can pick and choose the subjects that they like, So teachers, for example, can use something from general news or lifestyle to get their students to read along, with the articles. And maybe for a bit more advanced readers, maybe they can use the business section, business articles, to just understand what some of the terms are, how these words are read out. Yeah. Well, so you're basically improving your English while enhancing your general knowledge as well.
Yeah. So you're, in a way, in the know, not necessarily out of the loop from what's going on, right? I think that's what we want, especially today. I want to talk about the initiative together with MCMC because of the collaboration. Now, NST is also in the Nadi centers. To what extent will it help the rural as well as underserved communities?
Yes, underserved communities is a major focus. Now, as we all know, Nadi centers, there are about 1,000 of them
Nationwide.
Dotted throughout the country, right? So, but these, I think Nadi centers are widely acknowledged as the beating hearts of each community. This is in your PPRs and everything. This is where the communities come together, children come to play, families meet together as well there. And most importantly, these are areas where it's widely acknowledged that they have internet access, right? So even in your poor households which do not have Wi-Fi, you can go to your Nadi centers and access this. So why we chose why we are working with MCMC to have Nadi centers as the base, if you want to say, for Heard the News, is because of accessibility and because of how it basically connects the whole community, it binds all the community together.
And accessibility is a big part of this program. How do you think it will benefit auditory learners, the visually impaired, and those who struggle with reading?
Well, for auditory learners, they're listening. They're listening to how things are being pronounced, how things are being read. So if they want to express themselves well, in English, then they can learn how the words should be pronounced. And obviously for visually impaired, it makes sense, right? They can hear the news being read to them. Sorry, what was the other group?
And those who struggle with reading.
Struggle with reading, then they can follow. All right, so they have the paper, they've scanned, so they can see one by one how the words should be pronounced, the pace, and I think we make it quite clear. We're quite clear, don't you think, Naj?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so we try to keep a nice pace so that those who are following what they're reading or what they're listening to can actually follow it at a good pace.
True.
Yeah.
And there's another element to that as well, the beauty of using audio as a format. Because I think in this fast-paced world, attention span has shrunk tremendously. So when you have an initiative, a feature that compels you to just sit down, take 2 minutes and listen to something, I think that's it. That will basically benefit tremendously for someone in terms of their focus and in terms of paying attention to something, Yeah, in a TikTok era where it's just like 30-second videos, right? Yeah. So it helps.
Bite-sized.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't even have to sit down, Naj. You can have the news on the go
No, while you're driving.
while you're driving.
cooking.
That's
Right.
the other thing that's interesting about this, because having been trained in broadcast, one thing great about listening is that you can actually do it passively. It's not something that you have to be mindfully actively doing, as opposed to like watching TV, for example. But this is absolutely a great way to just gain the
news, I suppose.
develop the habit of just listening to news.
Listening, reading, all in one go, right?
True,
Yes.
true. And for example, if you're in your Grab going to work, listening to it, sort of thing, So it just like you said, it's just passive, and yet it registers, right?
So, looking ahead, how do you think the Heard the News initiative is able to, provide more impact as not just in terms of building English proficiency and bridging the digital gap there, right? To what extent can this initiative be expanded?
Okay. Interesting that you say that. In fact, ever since we launched the Heard the News initiative, we have been receiving videos from teachers actually who have been on their own initiative using Heard the News as a teaching tool. So what we're doing as the New Straits Times is we're looking at entering schools as well to basically use it as a teaching tool.
Right.
Yeah. There is no better way than a two-way communication, basically, in terms of a teacher using the audio experience, and for students to basically learn how to train their senses and to focus on the news items as well. Yeah.
Right.
And I think school kids get really excited by, the fact that we are innovating, right? Because
Right.
if you try to get them to just read the newspaper, I think they might be dragging their feet. But when you tell them, hey, there's another way of doing this, and it doesn't take too much effort, and it's being on the pulse. I mean, we may be 180 years old, but we're definitely rocking it because we're moving with the times and innovating and giving them, this is the way that they're doing it, right? This is the way they want to read. So we'll give it to them. So you don't want to spend time reading the newspaper? Why don't you hear it then?
True.
And then why not learn how to pronounce those words?
Personally speaking, I'm excited. I really can't wait to go and visit schools, have a campfire style sit down with the students and read out articles
Together
answer
with the
questions.
newsreaders, right?
That
kind of news.
exactly.
And even for us, because we know we're reading, so it's a responsibility to get it right. So sometimes we will face words that we are a little unsure about how to pronounce, and we will do the extra research.
True.
So whatever we put out there is going to be accurate and as it should be.
It's about empowering community, sparking curiosity, as well as ensuring that no one is left behind, right, Hazwin?
Yeah, that's the most important thing in education, in schools particularly. We should make sure that even the weakest are taken care of. Nobody left behind this time. Yeah.
Yes. Unfortunately, that's the end of today's episode. Again, I'd like to thank our guests that sang on set, NST's lifestyle editor, Intan Maizura Ahmad Kamal. Thank you so much, Intan, for being here.
Thank you.
As well as Najmuddin Najib, Associate Editor for the New Straits Times. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
These two personalities are your news readers for NST's Heard the News, so at least you can put the face to the voice in that sense, right?
Guilty as charged.
Yeah.
And to my co-host, Hazwin Hassan, thank you so much for being here on the show. If you like this particular episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to also turn on the notification bell if you haven't already. You'll not only get Beyond the Headlines update, you'll get other NSC Online's news report to leave it to you. Follow us on our socials. We are on Facebook, Instagram, X, as well as TikTok. My name is Amalina Kamal, and we'll see you next week.